Been bringing this federal government news conference. They are trying to show they're doing whatever they can to help out twin crises playing out right now in the Northwest Territories and in British Columbia due to wildfires and mass evacuations going on. Unfortunately, I have to say, awkward and messy. A lot of technical problems, glitches, unable to hear what some of the ministers are saying clearly, garbled speech, a little bit amateurish, really, and of course frustrating as we're trying to get clear answers from the Trudeau government. And again, given the magnitude of the situation, not exactly sure why they chose to do this as opposed to a proper news conference. In any event, there is an emergency situation in British Columbia and the Northwest Territories affecting thousands of Canadians, tens of thousands, really. Think about this. Yellowknife has about 22,000 people plus surrounding areas. It's about half the entire population of the Northwest Territories. They have about 45 minutes from now to get out of Yellowknife. There has been a citywide evacuation in alert. Also in British Columbia and Kelowna, population of 135,000, West Kelowna 35,000, and thousands of those people have been told to get out. The first Canadian military plane did fly into Yellowknife last night. 79 passengers were transported by the military from Yellowknife down to Edmonton. More flights are scheduled for today. Some questions, though, come to mind. Why the government has sent in only about 150 soldiers seems to be a bit of a small amount given the scope. Why not 500 or 1,000? And also, remember, unlike the United States, which has one federal agency, FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to handle crises like this, Canada does not have an agency like that. So again, as often is the case in our country, patchwork of different players, federal government, provinces, other jurisdictions, which arguably leads to a lot of logistical issues, coordination issues. Let's bring in Rachel Aiello, who has been following this news conference. She's standing by in Ottawa. She's been listening in for the past hour or so since it began. And Rachel, I know these ministers are trying to show, look, we're on it, we're doing what we can, but a little bit on the defensive as well over the response. What was your big takeaway from what you were listening to?
That's right, Todd. I think definitely to the question of why did they do this on Zoom, my presumption would be their response was we wanted to do this as quickly as possible. All ministers are in their ridings and not in Ottawa right now. But certainly I think that was largely frustrating to listen to for many. But I did take some notes. So let's just walk our audience through the big takeaways here. So right now, because it is fluid, they don't know how many people have been evacuated from the Northwest Territories. They are watching this unprecedented situation develop quite rapidly in British Columbia as well. They are saying that conditions remain difficult and it is going to be a long road ahead. So in terms of the federal support, Todd, that is there, we're talking about 150 Canadian Armed Forces members right now. And I think to the question of why not more, the way it works in that patchwork you alluded to is these requests for military assistance need to be made by the territorial or provincial premier. Presumably that premier has a lot on her plate right now, so perhaps that request is in the works, but the ask needs to be there for more military to be sent in. That includes 120 soldiers and 30 aviators. They are working on helping with the firefight itself, airlifting, evacuating. Blair there did note that there was an evacuation overnight of about 80 people from a long-term care home in the Northwest Territories. Hercules, Globemaster, and Polaris flights are up and running, helping with this effort. As well, Todd, the RCMP is on the ground and saying to people, if you are evacuating, they will be there to keep an eye on your home. Any concerns about looting and things like that, presumably that would be where the RCMP would come into play.
Yeah, you talked a little bit about the process, and as often is the case, it's the red tape, Rachel, the bureaucracy that can be frustrating, especially when, time is of the essence. As we know, this deadline to get everybody out of Yellowknife is 2 o'clock Eastern and, noontime local time in Yellowknife. I know that the Prime Minister is also on vacation, but there was an emergency meeting that was held on Thursday, an emergency response meeting with his team, top ministers and whatnot. What may have came from that meeting? Any sense?
So we did get some of that information, I think, in this press conference, if you kind of read between the lines. So this was a convening of key ministers, senior officials to talk about the federal response. And what we heard from a few ministers during that press conference, I think, shined some light on what was decided. So the Public Health Agency of Canada has been sending supplies from Canada's emergency stockpile. Transport Canada, we heard Minister Pablo Rodriguez there talk about his communication with Air Canada and other airlines, really driving home the fact that they need to send more flights and not gouge prices. So that is another effort that is underway, talking about giving some leniency in the airspace. So that is pilots can fly for longer as well. They are allowing people who are evacuating to travel with their pets. And if they don't quite have all of the ID necessary, there is some flexibility there because of this emergency situation. And then I think another thing key of note here, Todd, is what was announced about emergency or employment insurance. So the Minister, Terry Beach, Digital Services, said that they have outreach teams deployed, and that if you have lost your job because of the wildfire, you're out of work and you need to file for EI, you can do so and you will be prioritized based on your postal code. So they are encouraging anyone who is in need of that federal benefit to make those applications. Make sure you've got that a direct deposit. Obviously, that check in the mail is not going to be the way to go right now. But if you have lost your job because of this, they are prioritizing those requests. So you can see some of these other not CAF military responses, some of these other government departments coming into play in this overall federal response.
Let's hope that news conference is not indicative of how they're going to handle this crisis, Rachel, because wow. Thanks for this, though, and much appreciated. We'll talk soon.